The Pfaff Creative Icon 2 does come with a ton of accessories, and they come in a pouch, so I'm going to just take them out and show you where they fit into the accessory box. This is an accessory box that really helps extend the surface of your sewing area so you can have it on. You might slide it off if you are working or using the free arm, or if you're adding the embroidery unit in place, then this comes off. But we can find that just having it close by, you can keep all your accessories nicely tucked away in one of these two compartments. And when I pull out one of the extra stitch plates, it will actually fit here in the base. So even if I don't have this on the machine, I usually have it close by because then I can just roll this open. This little part here is kind of rubberized, and so the feet kind of stick and stay in place once they have their home. So I'm going to go through each of the accessories, and you can definitely take a look at all of our video tutorials that we are doing on this machine and see everything about how to use it. Now this is also a good video just if you're planning on purchasing the machine to get an idea of what you're going to receive with it. Now these are just going to be the feet and tools, and then we'll talk about all the other stuff throughout all the other videos that we do. So in no particular order, and I'm going to just pull them out, probably the big ones are going to come out first. You do have a longer foot here with a plug-in. That is actually a automatic buttonhole foot. So you can actually measure the button and tell the machine how long it is, and then this will do the rest for you. This plug-in actually plugs in on the back side, kind of back here, if you take a peek. And speaking of back here, this one fits perfectly in this back compartment. So we'll start with that. You also are going to get some spool discs. So this one actually will sit on the flipped up vertical spool holders. This is going to go down first. Of course, you're going to pull this up. So let's pull that up out of the way, and then this is going to go down. This is what your spool sits on. Now, if you do have some weird spool choices and you need to hold them in place, there are additional spool caps so that the spool themselves doesn't kind of pull up, especially if they get low and there's a lot less thread on it than when you started. There is a couple of spool caps that you can add to those positions. I'm going to just also kind of put those in the back. I don't need them as much as I used to. There's a total of 5, 6. Oh, I see 6. So some smaller ones as well. So we'll just hide those in the back. Speaking of spools, you usually find these also in with different machines like sergers as well. These little thread nets can also contain thread that might want to fall down and puddle underneath the spool when it's sitting. Sometimes when you have slippery thread or metallic thread, honestly, I don't know the last time I needed these. They are nice to have, and definitely if you need them, you need them. But I will tell you, most of the time they just end up at the bottom of the accessory box. Let's talk, I see a whole bunch of purple bobbins. One thing nice I love about Pfaff bobbins now is they have the Pfaff logo, so you always know which side to be on top when you are winding a bobbin or when you're putting a full bobbin into the machine. So you can't accidentally get them in upside down. So there's a nice handful. Probably the one thing you're going to buy first when you get your machine is a whole nother set of bobbins, because you definitely will use those sooner than you think. And it's just easier not to have to unwind thread once you get started. We have seam rippers, we have brushes. We're going to do a video on how to clean this machine. One thing you're not going to see in here is oil, and that's because you don't have to oil this machine, but you do have to clean it out. Fabrics like fleece and flannels, cotton, or battings, those are all going to get really linty, and you've got to do this on a regular basis. Otherwise, your machine's just not going to work so well. A seam guide, very handy when you're following along and trying to get an accurate seam allowance. That helps for even grid quilting if you're doing some of that. There's a pack of extra needles. We'll have some needle videos throughout where we will clarify some of the questions people ask us about, like size of needle based on thread choice. And when in doubt, just put a new needle in. I love you get a nice variety pack when you get this machine. Okay, I've got a couple feet in my hands. And so the nice thing is, on this machine, as you start to select different stitches, you will find that right up top, you're going to get comfortable looking in this top left corner of which foot this machine recommends that you put on for that stitch. So if you've picked a new stitch, it will show you. If you have, this is fun, if you have a different foot on, it will actually recognize that you're using a different foot, and it will actually come up and say, hey, you're not really using the foot we are recommending. It will let you use it, but it will guide you to say this would be the better one. Of course, you can always use the foot that you have chosen, but I love that it kind of questions me and says, are you sure you don't want to use the other foot? You have a 1/4 inch foot that comes with these machines. You have feet to help do some of the wider decorative stitches, so it can actually travel side to side. You actually have a foot with a guide. This is actually my favorite foot, and it has a guide in the middle. This comes with this machine, but there's some stitches in here, the floating stitches that it's called for, so they now include it. And so I'm always a fan of seeing that foot, and my favorite foot is now part of my favorite machine. An overlock foot, but we use this a lot. It can be your blind hem foot as well. It is adjustable, so it's very handy in a lot of things. We do a class at the store, and there's like 4 samples that the Pfaff people just leave this foot on because it's useful for all the different things that we're showing. And because that red marker or guide, it can go left or right. It can be adjusted for quite a few different techniques. Again, another foot, this one has a little bit more cutout on the back. So sometimes it says 0A, sometimes it says 1A, and you should always use the one the machine tells you to use. Here is actually the one that is the wider one for the maxi stitches. So you'll see that coming up from time to time. We also have your embroidery foot in here. I like to keep this right up here in my front closest opening because usually if I'm going from sewing to embroidery, I want to reach there. And because I'm going to maybe switch out some things, such as maybe switch to an embroidery needle, keep the screwdriver close by and you can get that needle in and out really easy. Speaking of needles in and out, if you need a little assistance, this multi-purpose tool is just that. One of its purposes is to help you kind of find the needle, loosen it, you're holding the tool, and then the needle just drops in here, and it will help make sure you keep the flat side to the back as you're supposed to do. We have a manual buttonhole foot, and we have a zipper foot. Now back to the part where the machine will guide you on which foot to use. If you put the zipper foot on incorrectly, because it can be done that way, accidentally, it will tell you, hey, by the way, you got your zipper foot on wrong. And then all you have to do, pull it off, switch it around, and nobody knows. And your machine will then let you stitch. All right, manual buttonhole foot is for when you need buttonholes that are longer than the original one, so you can make buttonholes that are however long you need them to be. Let me show you a trick about the manual buttonhole foot. There's actually a little kind of cutout in this top edge, and you put it with that little pointy side down, and then it will fit perfectly. So when this closes up, it doesn't restrict the closing of the front cover. This little clear foot, this could be used for free motion quilting. Sometimes I'll use this, and honestly, sometimes I've even used my embroidery foot if I have not already bought the more highly sought after free motion foot. Those two would actually work just great. I've got some extra bobbins. I have some large spool holders. This would fit like if you had a really tall spool and it was wiggling around, you can stick this underneath and keep it from being so wiggly. I'm going to put those in the back. Now, there is an extra bobbin case in here. Now, this is a specific bobbin case. It's for when you use your needle in the far left needle position. This will come up as a recommendation. It's highly recommended that you do just that if your needle's in the far left. Switch your bobbin cases out. It's super easy. It doesn't require any major tool. So I don't use that as much over there, so I'm going to put that in the back. I've got some more bobbins, and then the last thing, I kind of saved this for last. I mentioned this earlier, that there's a place for it at the bottom of the accessory box, and that is, It is the straight stitch throat plate. So a straight stitch throat plate has just that. It's got a single hole. I love this for when I'm piecing quilts or quilt blocks. I love it when I embroider, and I love it when I free motion quilt. So obviously the needle needs to be in the center needle position. But what's cool about this is that when I put it on, the machine can sense the difference. There's a sensor on here, and it will actually make sure the machine stays in the center needle position. So if I pick a decorative stitch with this on, it won't let me stitch that. It might even just let me stitch a straight stitch. So it is pretty wonderful. And if I switch it out, then it recognizes that my other one's on, and then will let me do a bigger stitch width. The way this goes into position is slide it in from the left side right up against that little notch over here on the right. And then as you push down, it will click into place, and then it can just live in the lower deck of your accessory box. That is all the accessories that come with it, and I can't wait to show you how we're using all those feet throughout all the free video tutorials we are doing on the Pfaff Creative Icon 2. The links below will get you to the entire playlist that you can watch from start to finish.